Hello, thank you all for having us here today on behalf of the topic Locomotive 202, the antique steam engine that's located at Hagerstown City Park. We are excited to come to you with a solution to what we don't want to see as an issue ever, but a solution to how to upkeep the locomotive going forward. So on our agenda today, we'll go over the history, we'll have our mission, some data analysis, a growth strategy, a possible agreement that we could come to with the city of Hagerstown, and then projected milestones and options for the city to choose from as they partner with us going forward. So my name is Karen Dunn-Swafford. I am part of the group Save Locomotive 202. I have always had an interest in trains. Living in growing up in the surrounding Hagerstown area, there are always trains going through everywhere. I pass a train track every single day that I go to work, and I've passed that track ever since I was an adolescent. Watching the trains and having grown up around them, I've actually passed that interest on to my children. And my children, everything is trains. Trains for toys, trains on the TV, trains on the tablet, and also the Locomotive 202 is of an interest to them. They love to board the cabin, ring the bell with me. It's a great time, and it's something that I want to make sure that future generations of children get to experience that, and future generations of parents as well get to experience that moment with their children. So my colleague Rich here is going to actually start by going over some history of the locomotive, a brief history overview.
Thanks, Karen. Mayor, council, thanks for having us here. I'm sure by now you all figured out, like, I'm the train guy.
Yeah.
Told Karen the other day, I went into a store and they said, oh, it's the train guy. So again, we do thank you for having us here. Just a few brief points of history that are very significant to Hagerstown, because we know that you have been educated very thoroughly on the history. Locomotive 202, as it's become known, has been in the city of Hagerstown's park for over 7 decades, 70 years. During this period of time, the city of Hagerstown government has invested already countless thousands of dollars into one of the most beautiful parks, and certainly the very unique train hub and museum that exists in the city park. The 202 itself is the last remaining Western Maryland Railroad K2 mainline steam engine in the entire world. Pretty special if you think about it, that Hagerstown could have something that magnitude, that is the only one left in the world. It was built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works in 1912 and retired in the late 1940s, early 1950s. It made its way into the city park in the late 1953 timeframe and has a really interesting story on how it got down in there, which I'd be happy to tell anybody outside of here if you're interested. At the time that 202 came into the city park, the president of the Western Maryland Railroad was a gentleman by the name of Arthur Groats. And our mayor here in Hagerstown was a gentleman by the name of Winslow Burhans, who Burhans Boulevard was later named after. They struck an agreement I'm sure through much communication, that Locomotive 202 would thereafter and forever be donated to the children of Hagerstown, something that the museum at the park and ourselves and everyone acknowledges has been very special throughout those 7 decades and holds true to today. It was maintained by the Western Maryland Railroad, which was really nice because you didn't have to have us here and listen to us talk and all that stuff, because the Western Maryland Railroad existed and took care of it for many years to come, until such time that the B&O absorbed the Western Maryland, later came into the Chessie system, rail system, and then now is ultimately CSX. But when the Western Maryland Railroad was absorbed by the B&O, that agreement to maintain the locomotive obviously ceased. Throughout the 70s into the latest restoration of 2008, off and on, numerous groups and the city itself has done much to keep the locomotive looking good and, well displayed in the park. August of 1984, a very special event occurred, and it was added to the National Register of Historic Places. Again, something I think Hagerstown can be extremely, extremely proud of. Most recently, just this past July 2024, it was awarded a historical transportation marker, which the previous mayor was able to go out and assist in unveiling that marker. So just some bullet points, some high points of why this locomotive is so special to the city of Hagerstown. And I'll turn it back over to my colleague for the mission.
So our mission is to gain your support as the city council to continue the city's ownership of Locomotive 202. We would like to offer to assemble a 501c3 nonprofit organization in order to help alleviate some of the responsibilities or all of the responsibilities of the train from the actual city. With that, we would partner with you, the city officials, to gain restoration or to throughout the restoration process. So depending on how much responsibility you would like to offer the nonprofit organization, they could, we as the nonprofit organization would be able to request restoration quotes on behalf of the city, come to you with bid amounts for the city to thereafter approve, and we could have any kind of responsibility you would like us to have. We would be able to start raising funds, accepting funds through private donations, grants, fundraisers, and businesses. We would help increase promotions for the Locomotive 202 and Train Hub Museum area, and we would advertise it as an attraction for small and large-scale events, train-related or not. We want to bring people to see the train. We would be able to utilize volunteers and interns to allow the Train Hub Museum and Locomotive 202 area to expand the weekly hours of operation. We would start by opening on Sundays, we would hope, and then take it from there to expand hours through the week as well. We would also be partnering with public and private educational institutions at all levels of learning to hone in on the railroad heritage and its substantial effect on the development of the city of Hagerstown. We are the hub city, so, we need to remind people why we have that name outside of just being the hub city now for all of the roads that travel through us. Our ultimate goal as a nonprofit, that would be partnering with the city through Locomotive 202 effects. We would like to multiply the Train Hub Museum and Locomotive 202's attendance, the collection there, as well as the notoriety of the museum.
Okay, I'm going to speak just a few points on some data. Currently, Locomotive 202 and the Train Hub area at the park is open and available to the public Friday and Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. This in the months of April through October. It's approximately 12 hours per week, 32 weeks a year. Locomotive 202 logged around 3,800 visitors in the year of 2023, which averages approximately 10 patrons per hour. Now, on the surface, that may not seem a lot, but what we have to remember is, again, it currently is open just a limited amount of time to the public. So 10 patrons per hour, and those kind of numbers kind of fall in line with the amount of time that it's open. National statistics show that heritage tourists, and that's defined as tourists specifically traveling to a certain place, such as Hagerstown, for a historical railroad experience, spend 22% more money and stay 80% longer than if they would not be traveling there for historical purposes. What we would like to do is work with the city to increase the above mentioned with little or no additional burden whatsoever to the city of Hagerstown government and certainly to the mayor and the city council. We're willing to take on that responsibility to try to bring all of those numbers up as an added benefit to such a partnership. And I'll turn it back over to Karen for growth strategy.
So we do have, there is a lot of data that we don't have, a lot of logistical information that we don't have from the city, to be honest. We are absolutely open and understand that idea. However, with the data that we have, we are offering this nonprofit organization partnership. Our growth strategy would be by starting to accept funds from the private and public sectors. We to date actually have pledges already of up to $5,000. That's on hold for whenever we do open up the floodgates for donations. We would look forward to partnering with all educational institutions, from TOTS through continued education, from elementary school through HCC, bringing in interactive campaigns either into the schools about railroad heritage or bringing them on site to Locomotive 202 and the Train Hub Museum for excursions on site. We look to market the Train Hub Museum as a designation or a destination for birthday parties, private events, city organized events, while including making sure that we do provide events that are free and open to the public at the same time. We look to raise enough funds and gather enough volunteers to expand the hours of operations at the Train Hub Museum. And we also look to expand the gift shop options. Something small, but something mighty, having Locomotive 202 gear. Somebody went to go see Locomotive 2 and all I got was the stupid t-shirt. Sure, let's do it. Let's bring these ideas to the table. And then also we want to open up the memorabilia donations as well as allowing on loan materials to expand the Train Hub Museum area and the Locomotive 202 area. If the city should decide to keep Locomotive 202, we do have information on a possible agreement, things that we would want to keep in mind as we would go forward with the nonprofit union with the city.
Okay, the meat and potatoes, if you will, the agreement. We do have a very rough draft agreement. We don't have it with us this evening. The main reason for that is because, again, Karen will get into more of the specifics. We're extremely flexible to work with this group and other city officials, not on the council, to come up with an agreement that the city is very pleased with. And we tried to hone that in and thought, you know what, it would be easier to work with people at the table that were from the city to get this language the way we want it. But just a little bit of an overview, as Karen had said and as we had said, Save Locomotive 202 would apply almost immediately for nonprofit status once the city council determines that, you know what, we like what you've said to us. We want to try to keep this locomotive in Hagerstown. The name at that time would also be changed to something more appropriate. And again, that could be flexible and the city could have input in that as well. We have an agreement that we're looking at, that we've made a commitment to ourselves and to the city of Hagerstown and to the mayor and his council, whomever that might be, that we would create this agreement for what we're calling a 10-year conservatorship. During that 10-year period of time, you could have, and Karen will get into the details, you could have as much or as little involvement in this locomotive as you wanted to. We will also work with the city to determine what responsibilities. There may be some things that we as citizens don't realize that you, mayor and council, may want to continue to keep your fingers on, because it is a piece of city heritage and city history. So we would like to set with whomever would be responsible for that and flesh that out. We would like to discuss with the city, because we don't currently have a nonprofit status, as to whether or not the city would be willing to be our banker, if you will. We'll take full responsibility for raising all the funds, collecting the monies. We'll have a treasurer. We'll keep all the financial records, but we could turn the money over as it was raised to an account that could be in total control of Hagerstown city government, if that's permissible. We don't know, that it is or it isn't, but that would be a help for us, at least initially. And at some point, as our group grew and our talent depth pool grew, we could certainly have our own accounts and things of that nature. Also, the quote process. Again, there may be some folks in city government that would like to continue to be involved in obtaining quotes for Locomotive 202. That's perfectly okay with us, but we're also fully prepared to take on all that responsibility. And that would also apply to the grant writing process that you see in the top of the second column. We have 2 trained grant writers in our group right now that have written successful grants, some in excess of $100,000. And we are more than willing to take that full process on, but you may have some people with extreme talents in those areas as well that could benefit us both. The nonprofit will maintain responsibility to continually care for the locomotive beyond the restoration. It's very important you understand, and the city of Hagerstown as a whole understands, we're not going to restore this locomotive and disappear. That's why the 10-year conservatorship. We're going to get the locomotive restored to its once beautiful luster that it had, and we're going to stick around to maintain it through working Saturdays, working weekends to keep it looking that way. Again, the city of Hagerstown would continuously own the train. We are not looking to assume any type of ownership for the locomotive. It would belong to the city, and we would be taking care of one of their historical assets. At the end of roughly the 8th year, looking into the 9th year, we would recommend with the city council, the mayor and the council at that time, that we sit down in that period of time and look to whether we want to create a new 10-year agreement covering the next decade, and if so, how we wanted to modify the agreement, or at such time or any time through here that the city said, we're just not satisfied, or we just have no interest in this, they could determine that they don't want to renew the 10-year conservatorship for another 10 years. Finally, the last thing in the agreement is we would like to offer someone from the city of Hagerstown a seat on the nonprofit organization that we establish. That could be any city official, or it could be someone that's sitting at this table right now, so that you would have a vote on the board of directors for the nonprofit organization. And I will turn it over to Karen now for some projected milestones.
So with where we're trying to go with a nonprofit partnership, we have set some light milestones. So within the first 6 months of the city and nonprofit organization, or Save Locomotive 202 coming together, we would say within 6 months, we would have official nonprofit organization status. We would also be insured and bonded at that point. Within the first year of the nonprofit being formed, we would have completed restoration quotes that we would be able to review. Then by year 2, we would like to have set goals and for our fundraisers. So we would want to make sure that we establish whatever the final restoration quote is. We establish that for a fundraising goal by the end of year 2. And then it is our hopes to start restoration as soon as possible, as soon as we do get the funds. We project that we would hope within 3.5 years, we would be having the restoration started or completed. That all would start upon raising the funds. We would have maintenance started on it immediately though. So touch-ups, things like that, cleaning it, we would go at it, we would get volunteers, all of that kind of stuff right away. The next slide that we have goes over options, and I want you guys to think of the partnership as sort of an a la carte option, so you can pick and choose what you would like the nonprofit to do. We could request the quotes, you guys could take care of the grant writing, we could both do fundraising opportunities, we could provide volunteers for things, we could do a partnership down the middle 50-50, however that logistically would work out would be up to you guys. Rich is going to bring us on home now.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Okay, so Mayor and Council, to summarize, we're prepared to form a 501c3 nonprofit organization with a name suitable to the honor of the city of Hagerstown, to the Western Maryland Railroad workers, as well as other railroad workers, and the best interest of the locomotive moving forward, as soon as you give us the go-ahead to do so. We want to continue to work with the city government and officials to obtain quotes for not only the locomotive, but also for any type of protective structure enhancements or any other things at the train hub that the city may like us to assist with. We're going to create some fundraising opportunities through events and sponsorships. We're not going to disappear. Many of you saw us on the streets on some very cold nights at City Park and some other places. If you all determine that, you know what, we like these folks, we believe in them and we're gonna let them do it, you'll see us on the streets again. I was already looking today to see what's coming up here in the first quarter that we might be able to plug into. So we're not gonna disappear. Work together to apply for grants. We believe that the grant that the city already has is a great step in the right direction. Of course, we thank the city government for taking that initiative, and we hope to at least double that amount, if not triple that amount as time goes on. We complete the restoration, keeping as much of the work done in the city of Hagerstown as we possibly can. Now, I've been told there's little or no resources left in the city of Hagerstown to do such a thing. I personally don't believe that. I think Hagerstown can do anything it wants to do if it puts its mind to it. But certainly we would keep as much of the work and the monies in Washington County as possible. Meaning if we had an option to do some work and somebody in Hagerstown could sell the product necessary for the work, the money's going to go in that pocket of that Hagerstown business person. We would prepare to assume responsibilities again for Locomotive 202 for a minimum of 10 years. There's got to at least be one person at this table that's tired of hearing about, say, Locomotive 202 and would like to not hear about us for 10 more years. So be honest, you can be honest. Tell me later, okay? And the city of Hagerstown would still own Locomotive 202. That's the beautiful thing for the duration of the agreement. So at any time they determined this was not going the way they had envisioned it, they could pull the plug on it. And in closing, again, with the summary, we'll keep and restore Locomotive 202 for the children of Hagerstown and the retired railroad workers for all the railroads that work and pass through Hagerstown as a bit of a memorial, if you will, for many decades to come. And are there any questions at this point?